Today on Tutorial Tuesday, I'm going to show you how to deep clean a pocket knife. Let's jump right in. To start, let's talk about what tools you're going to need. First of all, you're going to need a tool kit of some variety. You can do like I did and build your own, or you can pick up this really nice one from Blade HQ for about $100. But either way, this toolkit needs to include a few things. First being whatever drivers your knife needs. Most often this is a T6 and a T8 Torx head. I happen to have both right here. Also, you're going to need some Loctite to help keep the screws in place, as well as a solvent like this Tough Glide lubricant. In addition, you'll need a few cloths and this bowl of water. But let's clean ourselves a knife. The first step is you need to take your knife completely apart. You can find a lot of videos on how to do this on your specific knife. Nick Shabazz is the channel you're looking for. So I'm just removing all the screws necessary to keep this knife together and gently taking it apart. You don't want to force anything apart because that may make you break something. Luckily, the Lander 2 here is a pretty forgiving knife thanks to its replaceable scale design. It's a really cool knife. You should check it out if you don't know about it. Now we have the knife apart. As you can see, it's pretty dirty in there, and there's a lot of tape left on the blade here. I got this from my buddy Dallas upstairs, and he tends to use his knives for a long amount of time without washing them out, and I decided I would use that as an opportunity to make some content. So let's clean this knife up for Dallas. To start, you're going to use your bowl of water and wash off as much of the dirt as is visible. So water may be a little bit risky for some materials that are quite absorbent. For example, micarta can warp, but if you work fast and you don't soak it for too long, you'll probably be fine. If this were my knife, I'd probably be using soap as well because I don't mind using a little extra oil, but soap can leach the oil out of materials. It can also reset your patina on micarta if you're into that. And soap can do a really good job of cleaning, but it does make you have to use a lot more oil to get it back running smooth. So for today, in purposes of Dallas's knife, I will leave the soap out of it. If you'd rather not use soap, rubbing alcohol does a really good job as well. I'm just trying to do as many tools as you probably have laying around the house. Now what you're gonna do is take some of your cloths, and you're gonna dry out these pieces as best you can. Now that you've got all your pieces dry, it's time to start worrying about the tape residue on this blade. The secret to getting rid of tape residue is a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of actual grease. And in this case, we're gonna be using Tough Glide. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna open your bottle, you're gonna put just a few drops of this stuff along the blade. And then I like to just come in with the tip of my index finger and be a little careful because you are working near a blade, and just rub back and forth just a little bit until you start seeing it dissolve the tape residue. I like to use this instead of soap once again because oil lubricates your knife, but soap takes that lubricant away. Doesn't take a lot of pressure or a lot of patience on this, just a little bit. And before you know it, that tape residue is gone. You just grab your cloth, give it a nice wipe, and we're looking good as new. Look at that. Now, the next thing I'm going to worry about is the pocket clip. As you can see, this pocket clip kind of gets a lot of dirt underneath it. So people kind of forget about the pocket clip, but it does take a little bit of patience to do all of the parts of your knife, but it's a labor of love. So we got the pocket clip done. Now I'm going to do the spacers. Those are the other things people often forget, like to grab dirt as well. Next up, we're going to work on reassembling the knife. And now we're going to lay the knife down and we're going to hit it with the first few drops of lubricant. I like to put one right up there on top so it kind of drips down the pivot so we get lots of lubrication along the pivot as well. Then we come in with our first bearing. And then I like to give that another drop. I go pretty heavy with the oil on this because I want to make sure it gets plenty. We can always wipe off any excess later. Next up, we come in with our freshly cleaned blade. Put it down right there on the pivot. Now we're going to drop another drop of oil in there. Then we're going to come with our other bearing, throw that down, and then hit it with another drop right there. Now, much of what I'm doing here in the reassembly process is very specific to the knife, but whatever your folding knife is, I seriously recommend you lubricate every step of the stack as you build your pivot. And now we are ready to put our scales back on. So you'll lay the scale on the top, come with these body screws we'll start with. Now when we get done with the pivot, we're going to use just a teeny drop of Loctite on each of them. Loctite is a thread locker, and we use the blue stuff. The red stuff is a bit dangerous for knives, even though some people swear by it. We're just going to give it just a teeny little drop right on its head, and that should distribute all the way throughout. Give it a little bit off to the side, and that'll fall down. Now you're going to want to work pretty quick because this stuff can dry out. So we're going to come with our T8 because that is what we need here. Put that on our thing. Make sure we didn't lose all of our Loctite there. And now you're going to screw that into place just until it's seated enough, because we're going to tune it for centering and action here in just a moment. All right, now I hit this and see if I'm closing. We're closing really smooth. I like the action, but we do have a bit of blade play here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to tighten both sides ever so slightly. That one needed quite a bit. And there goes the blade play, and our action is still pretty good. Now sometimes you might tighten it a little much, and you might lose that. See, that one doesn't want to fall quite as nice, but it locks up real solid. Some of you guys like to ride the stud all the way out. You might actually prefer this. But I tend to prefer something a little bit less forceful to use. I'm going to give it just ever so slightly back it off on just that one and this one. And good action, good lockup, drops shut, and she is good as new. Now, most of the tools that you need to maintain your knife are available at your regular hardware store. However, T6 and T8 bits, and especially any smaller or even more exotic bits like the ones you find on Microtech, are going to be really difficult to find. So I would recommend picking up your bits at least at bladehq.com. And the rest of this, like, this is just a hex bit driver. You can find these everywhere. As for oils, you can get by with WD-40, but a true dedicated knife oil will make your knife a lot nicer. But mostly, this is a great DIY project. You don't need a whole lot of specialized skills, tools, or knowledge to keep your knife running in tip-top shape. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.